Daily Detroit is brought to you in part by Castalia Cocktails. Don't just drink cocktails, experience them with matching scents and knowledgeable barkeeps. Try one of their pairings or feel free to go off menu with an adventure for the senses. A couple things I personally love outside of the incomparable drinks is that the menu both tells you how boozy a drink is, and there is a full non-alcoholic lineup as well, taking the care to give you a top-notch sensory experience no matter how you'd like to drink. Whether it's the intimate indoor bar with less than 20 seats or the patio outside enjoying the best Detroit has to offer, it is a great spot for a night out, a drink after dinner, or a date. Castalia Cocktails is open to all Wednesdays through Saturdays from 5 to 11 p.m. with the possibility for unique experiences for small groups anytime with a reservation. You can learn more at CastaliaCocktails.com. That's CastaliaCocktails.com. And make sure to support the businesses that support us and stop on by. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Friday, July 14th, 2023. Man, the days are flying by. I am Jer Stays, and as it is Friday, Mr. Friday, Devin O'Reilly, how are you?
I am great, Jer. Great to be here on a Friday in the dead heat of summer. It's like you said, summer. It's moving so fast. I feel like
Is it different than usual? Am I just being more of a veteran young guy, or
I think we both are.
It used to be I felt like you'd get through in the Detroit pace of things. You do a bunch of events and you get up to like Grand Prix level, like that area of June or whatever. Then things would kind of like dip off for a while. And then September, everything fires back up again.
Yeah, no dip, it feels like.
No dip at all for me. Not at all. But I mean, a full inbox and a full desk means for employment, right?
Yes, I have a full desk. I have a full desk everywhere I go, whether it be at home or at the office. So
for sure. But I think we both have had a chance to get out a little bit, because if you don't get out and explore this wonderful place of Southeast Michigan, what else are you going to do? So why don't you go first?
Sure, I'll kick it off. I want to shout out and talk about a place that has been open for a while, but was closed, underwent a whole modernization, redevelopment. It's Unburger. So Unburger is this fantastic vegan burger place in West Dearborn on Michigan Avenue, just in the heart of downtown Dearborn there. For those of you who know Owl House, it's right next door to that by Mint 29. They do, I'm just going to say it and let listeners check me if they think I'm wrong, but they have the best vegan options from a burger lunch place than anywhere I've been to. They have the best vegan burgers. It's all kind of like Impossible, Unburger, let's say. I don't even say it's Impossible. It's the Unburger. So they have plant-based chicken sandwiches. They have plant-based burgers. Now, in their reopening, they have nachos, chili cheese fries, hash, slaw. Jerry, they have ice cream sandwiches that are dairy-free ice cream with vegan chocolate chip cookies.
Okay. Skeptical Jerry, skeptical. Okay, so prepare me. So I think I want to try this weekend. I'm trying to eat better. I'm all for trying different things, but here's the deal. When I eat vegetarian, I'm one of those people who like, I'll get like a portabella sandwich or something, right? Something that's like, okay, I'm not trying for it to be something that it's not. How does it stack up in all honesty?
In all honesty, I say what you have to do, this is my pro tip, they have different patties. So they have their like black bean vegetarian patties that they'll put on the sandwiches. It's kind of like the default. Those are really good in their own right. But I will agree with you, Jer, it tastes like a similar mimic of a burger you might have. However, if you upgrade, which will cost you some money, remember we talked about burgers last week, you might be heading towards a $17 burger here.
Okay.
But if you do get their Impossible Meat burgers, they have the classic, the unoriginal, which is their Big Mac. Those are almost indistinguishable. In that case, you feel like you are biting into a grass-fed beef burger. It tastes identical. So if you're looking to match taste, you can absolutely match the taste of a steakhouse or a bar burger with a vegan, but you'd have to pay a little more for it.
Okay. Now, I make a mean black bean burger.
Which
so is it good? But it tastes like it should, right?
Right. It tastes like a black bean burger.
Which is fine. Which is fine. My issue is the mislabeling.
Right.
So that was always my concern. So, okay, I hear you.
So my pro tip is to go with the upcharge. It's worth it to get the like actual Impossible Unburger patty. And don't miss out on the ice cream and the cookies, Jared. They're so good.
You know, you mentioned Owl House. I took a meeting there last week, and I almost sent you a picture, texted you, because I saw your dad on the wall.
Yes.
So here's my social media challenge. Find Devin's dad on the wall of Awa House in downtown West Dearborn.
It's also in East Dearborn. You want to know something funny, Jer? There's an Awa House in Brooklyn, New York, and guess who's on the wall?
Wait, your dad's on the wall?
He's on the wall in Brooklyn,
oh my
too.
gosh.
They put him
I know we have New York listeners. So if you are in New York and go throw it up on social media or Twitter or Threads or whatever.
He's the bearded Irish guy amongst all the other people. All the pictures you're going to be able to find. You're going to find the black bearded Irishman.
One of these things is not like the other. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. You know, you were mentioning about reopening, and it reminded me. Now, I haven't been there in a minute, but I have been following the story. O'Flaherty's in Grosse Pointe Park, the building next to it. It's in actually kind of like a cool older commercial block over there on Charlevoix. The building next to them burned, and they stayed open for a while, but apparently they're going to shut down for a month for repair. So I just want to give people a heads up there. And as I mentioned in the newsletter, dailydetroit.substack.com, there's a ton of stuff to do over on that east side. And I think I'm going to have to make a guide or maybe drag you out east. In one of these times, we can find some freedom for you.
We'll make it happen. I can make it work. For the people and for exploration, as I'm always, an urban suburban explorer, I will do it for that.
So mine I want to highlight, and you know what? The owners are just the nicest people, and they're in the neighborhood. MJ's North End Ice Cream. I want to shout them out.
Oh, okay. Well, we just talked about the ice cream at Unburger, which is vegan. I don't imagine this is vegan.
No,
but
this is Hershey's.
That sounds delightful in its own right.
Yes. In fact, I even made like a little TikTok video or Instagram reel or whatever they call them nowadays about it because I really enjoyed it. They're really working hard to build something. I think it's in their third year. They've been adding to the patio. They've got some great games that the kids can play, little selfie wall, that kind of stuff. And they keep iterating and doing more things. In fact, they also pop up over at the Congregation, where you're going to find them all the time, though. Their spot is on Oakland Avenue on that first block south of Holbrook. So you can just hop off the freeway, go there, get some ice cream, head the rest of your way downtown. Or if you're downtown, it's easy to get to.
Well, let's talk something, Jared, that I'm interested in with ice cream is because I feel like it's a dime a dozen. So this is not soft serve, or is it?
No.
This is your traditional hard pack, as you might call it.
Well, you see, around here, there's actually a ice cream truck or a soft serve truck. I don't know if that's legal or if that's how, but it's there and with a very tiny window. It's a whole story. Anyway.
But not soft serve.
This is not soft serve.
What are the flavors that they do well? Or is there just something you like from them as far as an offering?
So I do enjoy Hershey's ice cream. It's an older brand. I did the North End sandwich, and I chose to do it. So the North End sandwich comes with like the chocolate wafer, and I did a black cherry ice cream.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, that's one. The splits are pretty good, like the various splits you can do, and they do the cherry on top and all of that stuff.
Do they have a mint chocolate chip? I love a good mint chocolate chip.
They've got the
flavors.
I mean? They've got the flavors. They also have a food window as well. So they do some lunch and things like that. And so it's just neat to support a local business. The family's working really hard to do it. And I want to mention that on the 22nd, they're actually organizing a neighborhood bar crawl, like stopping by Kiesling and a bunch of other places. So I'll put a link to their website on our show notes. But yeah, MJ's North End Ice Cream Parlor. If you're coming into the city, if you're in the city, whatever, support local Black-owned business. I think it's a good thing.
I love it, Jared. I'm going to check it out.
Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the stories. Did you know that we entered ourselves into an award, a competition? I put us up for something.
I appreciate you being on top of that. I will certainly support us for a nomination, but let's let people know where they can support us for this award.
Okay, so we're giving it a shot for the Podcast Awards, podcastawards.com, in the news and politics category, which was a whole thing because I put it out there and trying to be like, okay, what category we belong in? Because people on Instagram think that we're in a different category than people on Twitter, than people on Facebook, and there's all kinds of options, but the plurality was really news and politics. So that's where we entered. Thing is, that's among the most competitive categories there is. You can imagine with news and politics, there's a lot of shows. We're up against like stuff from like documentary stuff from like ESPN and 30 for 30. We're up against some big shows. A previous winner was Today Explained, a national show. Here's the thing. To even the field, we need your nominations at podcastawards.com so we have a chance of getting into the finals. And it would be huge. I mean, look, anything's possible, right? But even just getting into the finals would be an absolutely great thing. And, the thing is, a couple people messaged me and were like, well, why aren't you doing local awards? Well, we're not a broadcaster. So we're not part of the Michigan Association of Broadcasters. We're not a newspaper. So we're not in the newspaper thing. Like, being our own thing and being in Detroit and Metro Detroit, there really isn't like an award set for us in media because we're not advertorial, right? We're not advertising.
No, we're not. We do our own thing, and it's
We
very
accept
much
advertising and sponsorship.
It's very much our thing, and so no, we're not beholden to any major advertisers in that respect. So if we get to the finals, we got to throw a party or something.
Okay, yeah,
you got to
what?
incentivize
Yes.
listeners. If we do this, then this.
I hadn't thought about this, but all right, let's.
Why
do it.
not? Right? Throw it out there.
If we get to the finals and we'll know in the first part of August, we'll throw a party. That's what it is. We will throw a party. So podcastawards.com, news and politics category, and of course, People's Choice. Everybody's entered in People's Choice, but news and politics.
Well, we are the People's Choice. I don't need an award to tell me that.
Mr. Friday is the People's Choice. So yeah, I just want to tell people about that. Let's get into some news. There's a story that I talked about in the newsletter and on social media that I kind of saved for you, Devin, because I feel like it's an important one to speak about. And apparently, and this is according to Joanne Muller, who's a very good automotive reporter, she's now over at Axios, that the supply of electric vehicles is piling up. The headlines is unsold electric cars are piling up on dealer lots. They highlight things like the Mach-E, which has, like 117 days of supply. There's other reports. Separately, you've got The Verge talking about how the Ford F-150 Lightning, there are people walking away from the pre-orders. The price, for context, rose from about $40,000 for the base model to $60,000 to $65,000 for the base model over the last couple of years, because this was launched in 2021. There are some people that are like, all right, we're going to dunk on EVs. There's some people like, quote unquote, it's complicated, which I'm inclined to believe it is also complicated because of rising interest rates and everything else.
It always is.
But you are far more tied into the mobility and auto world than I am, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Let's level set. You mentioned a couple Ford products, but this is certainly not something that's unique to Ford.
No,
We're
it is
talking
not.
about
No, it is
all
not.
companies. I want to throw out Tesla is experiencing similar issues with lagging demand. Teslas are going unsold.
The base models are doing okay, but the upper ones are
They
not.
had to slash the price of those base models to
Genesis
compete.
is having issues. Audi is having issues.
We talk about the Cybertruck at Tesla, which was supposed to be, again, this kind of F-150 killer at $40,000. Everybody who knows anything is like, that's BS. This is going to end up being like 70, 80 grand at least when it comes out.
Much like the Rivian. Remember when the Rivian was supposed to be so much cheaper and it just wasn't?
So this is a sector-wide issue. There is no delineation saying, oh, this company is doing it wrong. And I think Ford is doing a really good job in the EV space in their own right. But there are some major headwinds that EV manufacturers and companies are facing. And I think, Jerry, we can talk about it because I don't want to pontificate too much. I mean, I'm happy to engage in a discussion. But I think there is still this huge issue of two things. One, perception. Perception of EVs is still that I don't know how I'm going to navigate using one. Where am I going to charge up? Am I going to just run out of electricity on the freeway? How will I find a charger? I don't know how all this works, which the companies have tried to make headway in terms of there's apps now. So I can tell you, Jared, long story short, you should never worry about that because there's a million apps now that show you where EVs are, the range on EVs. You can drive a Mach-E, you could get you to, Saugatuck on a charge. So don't worry about that. The range now shouldn't be an issue anymore. And then the last thing, Jared, and we can talk too, is the price. Like you said, I think a lot of people would say, I support EVs. I think it's a great idea, the environmental aspect, other reasons you may have, but I'm not going to pay 30%, 40% more for the car just because it's an EV. I just as soon have my regular F-150 than pay 20 grand more for an electric one.
I think those are both valid points. I do think there is still an issue with charging. It's part of why the Tesla supercharger network has become kind of the center of everything. I think all but Volkswagen now are switching over to the NACS standard from Tesla and working on the Tesla supercharger network. That's something that's kind of consolidated a little bit. I have some listeners who've told me that things get a little congested at a lot of chargers, but I also have listeners who absolutely love it. One of them is a passionate advocate of their Chevy Bolt. I would totally own an EV. I think there's a lot of thought anxiety, especially because people like to go on long, long trips whenever they want to. There is a segment of the population that says, I want to be able to drive 600 miles like that if I feel like it.
A gas tank doesn't get you 600 miles. That's the thing. The way it is now, it's all perception. A tank of gas gets my Explorer, 300 miles of range. An EV charge gets you 300 miles of range. So it's the same distance.
Okay, but to that other point, should you pay 20, 30, 40% more for that same range?
I don't. Personally, I'll be honest, I wouldn't. I'm not there. That's why I'm an EV kind of middle ground guy. I would happily adopt to electric vehicles. I don't. I own an SUV, like a basic ass suburbanite.
Suburban dad. Like you got
yeah, exactly.
Like you've got the dad uniform
yes,
down now.
I have an Explorer, so I support Ford. Yeah, I'm a suburban dad. But I would be open to going electric with my next vehicle purchase, but I'm not willing to spend 20 grand more.
Would you be willing to go double electric? Meaning both cars in the household are electric.
Oh, you'd have to ask my wife that.
Okay.
My guess is she
can call in 313-789-3211.
She's a little more risk averse than I am. So my guess is she's going to want her combustible engine.
Okay. I love driving electric vehicles. They are fun to drive.
They are. To get up. I mean, when you talk about the performance, this is when you can
Now, I haven't driven the F-150, but I've driven the Mach-E. I've driven a bunch of Chevy products. I've driven some foreign products.
You can get someone else in here to talk about this, Jared, but I will allude to this and say that, I've driven some EVs, and it's like from those car people who are like, oh, I love my, my get up and my go. EVs have more kick, more torque, more 0 to 60 power than your combustible engine vehicles. So, I mean, when we talk about performance, EVs are there and then some.
I think what's going to be interesting is the timing of all this conversation, because we're right on the doorstep of negotiations between the big three and the UAW. And I think that's part of the sore spot of all this is EVs just require less parts and they're more direct to put together. And so I think that's kind of like going to be the news flashpoint over the next few months as that rolls forward.
I think you're right. I think there is, of course, these larger forces. And again, this is a political issue we don't need to get involved with. But there are these forces on kind of the government side, federal government, state government, especially federal, that are subsidizing the adoption of electric vehicles. I think we need that. I think free market, if we just left it to the free market, this would take a lot longer. So I do think that you need to put your thumb on the scale a little bit. But you're right. Some of these unions have their own feelings about EVs and the cars that they're building with their own hands. So I respect that they have feelings about this too.
All right, Devin, you come to the table with some news for us. You have some intel on that Broadway development in downtown Detroit. We kind of hinted at a little bit. 3 buildings. There are some old facades that are going to be saved, but at the end of the day, it's going to be, 9 stories tall, something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
But we didn't really have a ton of fill-in, but you did a little bit of digging.
Yeah, this is just Devin on the streets here. The streets of Broadway.
Broadway.
I was waiting for you to find some kind of song that would do it.
I love musicals.
We need like a
I need a musicals button.
Exactly. Daily Detroit 2.0 will have all these drops and buttons that we can just hit, right? Anyhow, I did some digging into this because I think it's a really cool project, and I really want to see that Broadway area get built up. We talked about how kind of I don't know, rough it used to be, sparse it used to be.
There's sparse is the right word for a
couple
while.
Liquor stores.
Now, before then, there was also like all those parties down there, right?
Right.
That I won't call that sparse, but those were pushed out.
Yeah.
And then it became very sparse. Punch Bowl Social is gone.
Yeah, but you have the comedy club. I think it's called One Mic. It's going to open up, the Mike Epps Comedy Club.
Yep.
So you'll have something there. So anyway, I think this is a really cool area. Really, I love to find areas in Detroit that are kind of like on the verge of popping. And I think this has the ability to do that. And this would really be the anchor project of that because you're going to develop 3 9-story buildings. But what you're doing is really interesting in that you're tearing down part of the buildings to only preserve like the first 3 floors. So walking along the street level, these will be beautifully preserved historic buildings, but then set back will be the new building, which will still be, it'll still kind of have that historic tie-in, okay? But it'll be brand new. That way you can build out amenities and things that are more appropriate for newer buildings. But what's cool about this is it's going to be deeply affordable. And the developers here have basically said, and I'm not trying to, this isn't charity work, Jared, as we talk. Developers are developers. They got to make money. But at the same time, the 80% AMI requirement, 80% of income is kind of the requirement for development. They're doing 60% AMI just because they feel they want to do that. So they're going out of their way.
That's a lot closer to the city's
because there's a lot of pushback that 80% AMI isn't really where Detroit's at, and it's accurate. So 60% gets you there, gets you closer.
And for a refresher, for those who are just tuning in, that's average median income. This is something that is determined across the region, not in your municipality. And the idea is they call it affordable housing, but in my mind, something that's at the AMI level, that's more of like a workforce housing. That's more middle class housing. When you start to go 80% of that, that's even less. 60%, then you start getting closer to the income levels of that $35,000, $40,000 a year that is in the for the city of Detroit, 30, 40,000, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And the hope is that this can become a development that can be very diverse. It can incorporate young professionals downtown, but it can also incorporate some of the service industry folk that work downtown and be able to live downtown as well.
Do you have any idea on the scale of this? We know 9 stories, but
I don't know the full square footage. I know 9 stories across, 3 buildings. So 3 buildings and 9 stories. You have a good bit of space. This is a pretty large project, especially on that block. It'll really transform, I think, that block of Broadway there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for all the extra stuff. Now, we're going to end the show with something fun, something close to my heart and something close to yours. Well, frankly, let's be honest. We enjoy both these places. There was a list that came out from the American Alliance of Museums of the best museum cafes and restaurants according to Museum People. And this is an unordered list, but making 2 spots on the list are Metro Detroit places. Lammy's Diner at the Henry Ford, which, if you haven't been, when you go to the Henry Ford, it's a very cool thing. It's a total retro diner. It was salvaged from Massachusetts and brought to the museum. Diner food, all that. I've actually eaten there a couple of times, and now I want to again. And then the second entry is the Kresge Court Cafe at the DIA, which I maintain still, even though you got to go into the museum, it is one of the best coffee shop experiences you're going to have in the city.
Kresge Court is an absolute gem. And I want to say, Jer, you mentioned coffee. You could do coffee there. Pick up a theme. This is the stuff I love. You can do coffee there. You can do lunch there. Clearly, they're getting acknowledged for their incredible food and lunch program.
They have beer and wine.
They have beer and wine. You could get a drink there. You could hang out there into the evening. Kresge is as an absolute gem of a space. So that goes without saying. But throw out to Lemmy's Diner. That's awesome, too. I think I mentioned this before, but I went to high school in the museum in the Village.
Now, was it open back then?
Which is a really fun fact. It was not open back then. So it
was just sitting there as like a diner car, old diner.
Like many of the things at the museum, it was kind of just there preserved in history. So you could kind of like file into the diner. There was like glass up. So you could see, oh, here's what a menu used to look like. Oh, here's what a back counter of a diner used to look like. And that was all interesting. But you always felt, at least I always felt, like, wow, but wouldn't it be cool if this place actually served food? And sure enough, they started doing that after I left high school, of course. But they're doing that now, and Lammy's is great, and it's very authentic. They serve the type of food that you would find in a diner there. So I would definitely encourage people to check both places out. It's not like these are hidden gems.
These are the 2. I think these are 2 of the top 5 tourist attractions in the entire region.
Listeners haven't been to these places, my God, what are you doing?
Well,
Go to these places.
Especially if you live here, because here's the thing: the Henry Ford and Greenfield Village, by far and away, far and away, are the biggest tourist attractions in Metro Detroit. Like, people come here for the history. And I think that it's so important to visit the things that are in your backyard because you can spend days there. Greenfield Village is one of my happy places.
Oh, it's full of campers. You see like the parking lots, there's always like campers out there. There's a Comfort Inn like adjacent to it. I've always said they need to build a hotel like on site basically.
Actually, I was going to ask you, have you ever ridden the Model Ts there?
Yes, I have.
Oh, yeah.
Those are fun. That's a great time too.
Yeah, for sure. So, these are 2 places that are completely unhidden. Very much gems, but very...
Sometimes you forget stuff that's right under your nose, so...
Oh, for sure. So, yeah, actually, there's Greenfield Village. There's also the IMAX. Is it an IMAX theater, 3D theater?
They have an IMAX there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's just like a ton of things to do over there. And, nearby, there's a ton of restaurants because that's over near West Dearborn.
You're right in my neck of the woods. You can go to Unburger. Let's tie this. Let's put a neat little bow on this, Jer. You can go to Unburger after maybe some diner food. You could hit Mint 29, one of my favorite places. You can hit Ford's Garage if you want to stay appropriate and on brand.
I did not realize that was a chain until recently.
Yeah, Bill, they started in Florida. Like, there's a bunch of Florida locations, but Dearborn came calling for obvious reasons, so it wasn't started in Dearborn. But yeah, Ford's Garage, great. So you got plenty of dining options if you're at the Henry Ford. Come say hello come say hello. Come say hello to my neck of the woods.
All right, with that, we are done for today. Thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Thank you to our members, patreon.com/Daily Detroit, who help keep this thing going. Next week, of course, more shows, more fun things to talk about in Metro Detroit. As always, feedback 313-789-3211, dailydetroit@gmail.com. I don't always get to writing back as soon as I'd like to. Things have been kind of busy, but I do try to read everything. And also, if you notice, try to just incorporate it into the show if I can. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devin O'Reilly.
Remember that you are somebody. We'll see you around Detroit.